Okay, welcome everyone back to another episode of Energy Unleashed. My name is Suzanne Worthley, and I'm here with my co-host Kim Hess. Hello, Kim.
Hello, Suzanne.
How you doing up there?
Good. It'll be a while before we get back, I think, so we're enjoying every moment.
Little cold snap going on in Minnesota. All of a sudden, because it became spring with spring equinox 2 days ago, we decided to get snow.
Well, cold weather, the ice is back on the lake, for goodness sakes.
It's like such an odd thing. And then we were chatting on an online group that you and I have, and it was something about a polar vortex. What was
Yeah.
that you sent out?
Yes. It was sent out by the NASA that the polar vortex is
Mhm.
going the other way now.
Right.
And they said it's starting to slow down and they think it might reverse back again, but they don't know. They're like, we're not sure what caused it,
And
but
I
it's
glanced
happening.
at it, but I was in between clients, so I didn't read thoroughly. Did it happen to say if it was going counterclockwise or clockwise?
No, I don't think it did.
Okay.
So whatever way it was used to going, it totally flipped him with the other direction. I feel like it's going counter for some reason, but the article didn't give enough information to understand any of it, and I haven't found anything else on it.
Okay.
But I think it's interesting. I'm like, wait a minute, these things just don't happen. Like, what would cause that? Is that an energetic surge or something that messed with it for a little bit of time and now it's going to go back? I don't
Well,
know.
I think it's so interesting that there is actually a small amount of coverage on that, whereas a year ago, if you recall, when I ended up in ER, by the way, because the inner mantle of the Earth changed rotation and they barely covered it on anything.
Yeah,
And
right.
as I wasn't that in January, Kim, or was that in March?
I think it was January
January 24th, I'm
24th.
almost
Yeah.
positive. And I remember it was 24th. And I woke up in the middle of the work because I was obviously participating in some form of reversing that intermantle spin. And it went from a clockwise spin to a counterclockwise spin. And then what I found out as a practitioner was that I was reversing a lot of people's chakra spins after
Yeah.
that, yours included.
Yeah.
And I was having a lot of need to reverse the spin to the mother energies. Father energies goes clockwise, mother energies goes counterclockwise. So I would be curious to know if it went to a counterclockwise vortex spin, because I'm wondering if everything is aligning with the mother energies differently.
Hmm.
And I would be super curious to know if it goes back, because I kind of think once it's a mother energy, now it's going to hold, but it would be kind
Neat.
of something to monitor. So maybe we'll try to keep an eye on that and let people know. But
Yeah.
brand new, right? New
Right.
stuff.
And then equinox is going on, and then we're going to go into the eclipse, and
Yep.
the full moon's coming up, and I'm like,
Solar eclipse, lunar eclipse, the whole 9 yards. It's just madness. It is. And I'm having a lot of interesting client sessions. I've been super, super busy and people are very confused about the energy. But one of the ones I wanted to bring up today, I just had recently and asked for her anonymous permission, was really super interesting. This is a gal I had not worked on before. And she was, I think she said she's in her 50s. And she asked some kids that are, fairly grown now. She was interesting because she kept making reference to, I just kind of float through life. I just don't feel like I've ever really been, like really purposeful about anything. And she said, I mean, I obviously have joy because I have kids and I'm a mom and I like things, but it's never like joy. And then she'd say, and I don't really feel like I love my job. And I just kind of seem to just go through life. And it was kind of sad to hear in that she felt like she was trying, to connect to being a
yeah,
human on this planet. And I said, it's funny because a lot of people on this planet, in my opinion, not
yeah,
judging, but energetically walk around like zombies. There's a lot of what we would coin asleep people. And
yes,
she said, well, it's not even that. She said, because she's actually quite awakened in terms of ascension energies, understanding crystals and oils and all kinds of things like that. So she is on task to some extent about the knowledge, but she said, but it's the connection to the energy. I just don't feel like anything really gives me anything. And I'm like, that is so interesting. I've
mm.
heard versions of it, but not quite like that. So get into her session. As I said, I have never really worked on her before. And going in with this notion of, she said, I'm just existing, I was seeing what I could find and immediately found that and she had not brought this up, that she had a very traumatic situation when she was a child.
Mm.
And I narrowed it down to right around 10, 12. And I know that she had a traumatic imprint. So I'm going deeper. into her field as I'm working. Now, I'm going to just kind of use my hands to draw. So we have our body and then we have our aura around us, right? That's
Mhm.
our energy body where I work a lot of times. The very first field in our aura is called our etheric body, which is our energy template. It's our blueprint of what we are, how we show up in life, how we navigate life, etc. Right? It's the actual blueprint. So it's our energy etheric body. And when I went into her field, it was super interesting because her auric field was completely ripped on one side and her etheric body was outside, overlapping outside of her aura. So her human body again is here with her other layers of her aura, meaning emotional, mental, spiritual, etc. But the etheric body, which is truly the instruction set to implement everything, was off kilter. It was like, and I've seen similar things like this when I do a massive concussion person,
Yeah.
or if I do a really, really traumatic accident, or if I, have found somebody that has been really severely traumatized, and yet I didn't have the story on her. And this is such an interesting quandary because as a practitioner, I find this void in between that two bodies, in between that space. And my job is to somehow capture this etheric body, pull it back in and merge it within the aura, put it where it belongs organically on the structure of her holographic self, and then close up the aura and rebalance everything.
So
It's a lot.
does this mean it has to be a physical trauma, like something
I
physical
don't know.
caused
It
that?
can be definitely when it's traumatic. It can be an emotional trauma,
Okay.
a sexual trauma, but it is to the extent of where it's terrorizing them to some extent. That's how big it is because it literally throws them out of their body. Now, sometimes what I've noticed too, when it's an emotional, oftentimes even a sexual trauma,
Mhm.
it's a protection mechanism of sorts too, because I want my so-called energy body to separate from my physical self. Let's say I was physically, sexually being abused.
Mhm.
I don't want that body to know that feel. So my
Mm.
energy body pulls out as a protection mechanism and it almost is like an observer of my life. But the detriment to that is that the human form is carrying all the rest of that responsibility without a connection to the actual instruction set to make everything work.
Oh.
It's big.
I can't, so that separation, I understand what you're saying with that, but when you are being traumatized like that, is it a fright or flight kind of thing that you can do with your aura? Like a
I don't think anyone has the capability to purposefully do it, especially at the age 12. Oftentimes we find this thing when they are young, when it's a sexual or traumatic or physical abuse.
Mhm.
But when it's a concussion, they don't even know because they just get bonked out. It's
Right,
like the
right.
ping pong ball just goes toink off the table, and flies
That's why,
out.
like, physical made more sense to me than
Yeah,
emotional
than
because
emotional. So
yeah.
emotional, I don't think it's ever purposeful, maybe to some extent where I have to protect myself, but I don't think people have enough wherewithal or knowledge about the auric fields to even be able to go, hey, I'm going to pop out of my etheric body and I'm going to throw it over here as an observer. I just don't think that's a thing. But,
Yeah.
it may be for some. But anyway, this was very super interesting and it takes a good amount of time to A, find it, B, figure out what you're doing, and then C, get it back in and merge and balance and kind of like integrate, right? And so I get done with the work and she stands up and she's got this is the fun part about the work, this face of, wow, I totally feel different. And it's like, well, yeah, because welcome to your body after 56 years or
Oh
58
my
years, right? I
gosh.
mean, it's just weird. And so she sits down and we have our discussion following. And the first thing I say is, can you tell me if you had something traumatic in your life at around age 12? And she said, yeah, I almost died. And I'm like, what? And she said, yeah, I almost died. And I can't remember if she said it was like sickness or what it was, but the doctors were telling her she was going to die and telling her parents she was going to die. Therefore, she believed at 12 she was going to die. So this is really where it starts in terms of, well, then the body's starting to leave, right? I'm starting to leave, but it's not my body because I'm really not going to die. So my energy body steps out. So it was quite astounding to get the validation that, yeah, at 12, again, right age, was, yeah, I had a very traumatic experience and I thought I was going to die, as did my whole family. And we carry this stuff for the next 40 plus years. in our fields, not being aware. But think of the sadness and the distress we go through, because it's like, I don't know why I can't feel anything and really attach to anything that everybody else does. I feel like I'm broken. So she's had a really distressing life in that regard. And it's so amazing that A, that we could find it, and that B, maybe she can have a chance to make up for some lost time, right?
Right, right. So curious about this because you've also mentioned this type of thing happening with like maybe a baby being born. And if it was a difficult labor, sometimes they're not totally connected either in
Yeah,
their
that's a little
body.
similar, Kim. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. In
Okay.
terms of the soul is dropping in, but that would be a different field. That would be the spiritual field, for
Okay.
example. So remember, we have our physical body, this one, but then the auric bodies are, I have that physical etheric energy body. It's my energetic blueprint body. And then I have my emotional body, my mental body, and my spiritual body. I mean, there's seven if we want to break them out according to every chakra, but basically there's four. So we have, our physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual energy bodies templates are the main ones for the aura. And so when we are a baby, we're coming in and not necessarily jumping into the full physical form because the spiritual form isn't really aligned.
Right.
This is an emotional one that was already in and pulls out. So it's kind of a reverse action, but similar.
So is this, let's talk about kind of the process of death for a second, because would it be that she really was at a point of dying and was stepping out
Quite
potentially?
possibly, quite
And then
possibly,
and then
because
she didn't die, but it couldn't pull back in?
right. So in the death process, the way that I explain it is the gasoline of that root chakra starts to release first, and it will start to dissipate and release and stop running the fuel of the root chakra. And as that happens, that first energy body starts to dissipate.
Mm,
Dissipate and transmuting is different than moving over, though. So
okay.
I'm going to dissipate and transmute. This actually steps aside.
Okay.
Okay, because the root chakra isn't completely down. However, the concept, the idea, the instructions of you are dying could have instigated that process
Mhm.
in terms of, oh, my gas, what am I doing? Oh, my template, what am I doing? And then, of course, it just stepped aside instead of transmuting fully because she
Wow.
didn't go through that death. So it's really an interesting thing. I don't see it very often, but when I do, it's quite fascinating in that it really truly affects their life in so many ways.
Mhm.
Like she
Yeah, I
said over
just
and
think
over,
about that. I mean, so I'm still trying to work through, and I know
yeah,
other people are too, the difference between the physical, the spiritual, the emotional. So the emotional is sitting in that first aura
nope, the
or part of
physical
it,
one is
the
the
physical
physical one.
is.
Yep, because
And
it
that's
matches your
what
root
was
chakra.
hanging
Yep,
out.
yep.
But because you're not fully connected, your emotional, spiritual, and physical are not working in
Well,
connection
you're
together.
you're you're working, but it isn't integrating. So
Right.
she never truly is connected, meaning I can have an exciting experience over here and I can get emotional, but there's not the template that takes that emotional aura and integrates it into my physical Suzanne meat and bone body because the template of the instruction set for the physical body is gone. So
Ugh,
there's a glitch, right? It's so fascinating.
so fascinating because it's you don't really think about how it's all connected. We know it is, but then thinking about how it is in your fields,
Yeah.
going through the chakras like we were talking about, but then going out through the layers this way,
Hmm. Hmm.
how that all connects based on the instruction set on that first aura.
Yeah, and they all interpenetrate and play off of one another. We need them all. And if I happen to be missing one, it's like a rung in my ladder is not there, so I can't really get to the top or the bottom,
That's
right?
interesting. So when she stood up, what did she feel physically?
Her face was doing one of those WTF moments, like, what is happening here? And I love that about my job too. I love that face of what is this? And then I simply say, welcome to your body. And that's one of my favorites because there are many people that don't even know what their body truly feels like for whatever reason. And when they actually feel it for the first time, especially when it's connected to the actual ground and the earth itself, because we ground them so well before, they get to leave here. So it's really interesting when they have that kind of like, what? That feeling. It's
Mhm.
super interesting to me.
Did she get
Yeah,
emotional? Like,
yeah, she
okay.
did. Hmm.
I was curious because that feeling of, oh my God, now I feel this.
Hmm.
I can't imagine you wouldn't get really emotional around
And I
that.
had a hell of a time grounding her too at the end. It was like, you have got to ground because she didn't know how to be in her body. She didn't even
No.
know. She likes to float. Well, the reason why she's floating is because her body instruction set's been floating for 50 some years. And I had to ground her and then re-ground her and then ground her one more time. And I sent her home covered in Valor, you know, because that's a really good oil to keep you in your body afterwards. And so that was really interesting that she didn't know how to even accept the grounding.
Yeah, you don't know what it feels like.
Right.
Yeah.
And you don't trust it because that feels weird. It feels more safe to float if I've been floating for 50 years.
So how easy will it be for her to all of a sudden have that happen again?
Pop
Because
out.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's going to be interesting to note because, like, for example, I've done concussion people
Mhm.
and they can pop back out again because they've got hit 3 times in the same spot and their aura is weak and we repair it and it's still kind of the Achilles heel of the aura. And it can pop out, but not very often, hardly ever, but it does happen once in a blue moon. I don't necessarily think this will pop out because I don't believe the trigger that set it off in the first place is strong enough in her mental field to trigger that. So I think it will be okay, but
Yeah.
I will be really curious. I asked her, please check in with me in about a week or so and let me know what's happening. So I think it's just super cool.
So
And if we
she's
ever
not
talk about
holding
something similar, I'll update.
so if she was holding a lot of fear and anxiety and those kinds of things around that 12-year-old age where she thought she was dying,
Mhm.
be harder to keep that in place?
Quite possibly, because then again, you're having more narratives and more triggers that can actually feed that narrative line,
Right, so
right?
the
Yeah.
your thoughts would totally, I would think, trigger that if you were not in a good place.
But she was adorable because she's kind of like, oh, yeah, that was when I was supposed to be dead. And I, what?
Oh my
Yeah. You forgot that in the first part of the meeting, you know? So it was interesting,
god.
super interesting.
Well, she
And
was
then
old
I'm,
enough to remember because sometimes there's traumas when you're, under the age of 4 or 3 or
yeah,
whatever, and you don't remember,
yeah,
but it's still
it's super
there.
cool. Yeah. So then on the heels of that one, same week, I did, and I do this often also, I had a person that really struggles with different kinds of substance abuses. And, whether it's meds, whether it's prescription meds, whether it's, coke, heroin, weed, pills, whatever, alcohol, um, anything that is ongoing and an addiction will really hurt the auric field. And the auric field is what keeps me safe again. It keeps my gasoline. So this particular one was similar again in that somebody that is an addict will oftentimes go into that zone of being high because they feel safer, when in essence, that's not safer, right?
Right.
And that will also throw the actual auric layers out of order as well. And so it was funny because it was sort of similar in terms of this isn't the right alignment on this aura either. So we have that I want to go hide because I don't want to either succeed or fail or both. I'm never good enough. I'm not safe. All those things that we are always our worth. That's always what we're struggling with anyway. And then the addiction adds to that.
Right.
And it's so interesting to me that a lot of the addiction people that I come across will have I don't want to say storylines. They have storylines. Their life's story has lines or narratives from someone, meaning a father, a mother, a grandfather, a grandmother, an uncle, an aunt, a teacher, a coach, a sibling, whatever. And they'll take that narration and they'll weave it into their storyline and they'll use it and it will become their truth. And it's really, really interesting to me that we hold on to those truths and we make them that. I was at a family function a while ago and we were teasing. There's those belief systems. Well, first you get married and then you have, the wedding and then you buy the house and then you have the baby, but you have to have the job right out of college. And those kinds of things are very dangerous because we will beat ourselves up because we're not on time on the timeline that someone else gave us. And when we self-doubt and self-deprecate and really bash ourselves because of those things, that's when we're never good enough. And that's when we turn to things like, I'm going to get out of my body. I don't want to show up. I don't want people to see me. And that's when we become addicted and hide. So
Mhm.
these things all play off of one another. So it's really important if you're having any issues with anything that's serious addiction to look at your belief systems. What is the story that you're telling yourself? Where do you fail or not fail? Oftentimes they're really scared to succeed because they're actually more scared to fail again.
Mhm. No,
But the reality is that they're
yeah.
already not wanting to succeed anyway, because it's a actual validates my fail. Do you see? So it's a game. This is all a loop game. And these were very similar in that the auric fields were not in alignment. So even if I have myself, the addiction field now is the emotional and mental field, not the etheric body and not the spiritual body. So this particular client had more of those auras off. And those were the broken auras, because when I'm doing scanning, no aura at all in the mental and emotional field, because that's just what's trashed with my non-self-worth.
Right.
You see how crazy this gets, because it's layers and layers? So the energy practitioner has to go in and find the miscalculations, the non-alignments, the whatevers, the weaknesses in all of the layers, and make sure that they're all working consecutively. So important.
It is. I mean, just working on one chakra is time consuming and difficult, right? So you're looking
Right?
at all chakras, which is more than 7,
Oh
all,
gosh.
yep.
Yeah.
And then the layers out that coincide with all
Which
of
is
that.
more than 4 or 7. Yeah,
Oh my
because of
gosh.
how many chakras you got a layer, right?
So when you're
So
talking about the etheric, you said etheric
body.
field, right? Okay, right. That the instruction set is there.
Yeah.
So if that's lined up, but now you're saying your emotional and mental out here are not, um, is that instruction set really important for you for the healing piece of it? Like how does,
Well, these have to, it's the instruction set is lined up, but it's not getting the right information. It's not getting the right instructions.
yeah,
So,
right.
because if my mental field is having the narrative that my dad or my grandpa gave me, my blueprint body is getting the wrong instruction.
Okay.
That's why I want to get high and hide and not let my physical body feel anything, because I'm already being self-destructive, and
Well,
validating that I don't have any worth.
right. So then that goes into the whole I'm a victim,
Yep.
and which creates, anger and fear and all of the things with that. So yeah, it's so interesting how that and I know this from talking to you before that, the different layers going out and a lot of this, but that something at 12 years old could totally be
Mhm.
out there for that whole time without self-mending it, but not knowing that it's out there. Like
And
you
conversely, the other one is I've had this narration my whole life, so I build into the narration my decline. They
oh
did
yeah.
two different things. It's so interesting, and yet they were similar and completely separate and different.
Mhm.
So yeah, 12 years old, I'm just in fight or flight survival mode for all of these years and don't even have a clue. This other one is being bashed with a belief system and a narration storyline that I have to make sure that I do, because that's what our family does. And
Mhm.
because I fail, I try to hide from it. I can't be enough. There isn't enough of me. I can't do it. I'm a failure. I should be at this point in my life right now, and I'm not, blah, blah. And so he builds into it. She lives it and doesn't know. It's crazy. They're all over the board. And yet, in an auric sense, they're very similar. I think it's so similar. It's just so
It
interesting.
is very similar. It's very similar work. Like to
Mhm.
that's what I was wondering the first case that you're talking about with the 12-year-old situation, like what kind of work is that going to take for her on herself to continue to because there's some healing that has to happen.
Mhm.
And I'm sure that a trauma like that, there is something still sticking out there that she needs to work through.
From
Um,
the standpoint of her energy now, the really critical things are to work on the root chakra and make sure that she understands that she signed up for a planet, and
mhm,
that she is connecting to the maternal mothering energies, which is another element to her case, mother issues and such, which I guess most everybody has. And I love saying that when I am a mom of 4,
yeah,
but
right.
there's always something in our parental messaging. And it doesn't mean the parent even did it, by the way. It's how I perceive myself around the parents. So
Yeah,
we get to
right.
let the parents off the hook. But so it's about nurturing myself,
Mhm,
connecting to the planet, and understanding that I'm safe here, because I'm not dying, I'm not going somewhere. there isn't any abandonment happening. So the victimization of abandonment can start to go away. But
Mhm.
number two, what's even more important is to understand the feel centers were cut off 100%. The logical mind was working, the mental field was working a little bit, but really in a very confused and almost victimization way. But the emotions were almost non-existent. And so the logical mind was like, why am I broken? Why can everybody else be happy? Why do they love to hug their kid? Why do they like to do that and I'm broken? So there's a lot of repair in that area that I
Yeah.
get to understand that I haven't really felt. So A, I let myself off the hook and forgive myself. B, I start to nurture myself. C, I start to work with those actual emotions, real true feels, not just I'm mad or I'm angry or I'm scared. It's no, I feel abandoned. I feel wrecked. I feel invisible and alone. Those really deep ones where we go into them and really start to understand that it's important for my body to trust that I can be all of these and not judge them, and I can move them around and not be them every day, etc. So it's a really big igniting of that sacral chakra.
This is going to change relationships and everything in her life too. I would
Actually,
imagine.
that was part of the intake. It was really difficult to have relationships, especially
Yeah.
even a partner, much less
Because you
children.
couldn't attach, you couldn't feel
Right.
that, like you said, that feel or that love connection, like heart connection.
And
Um,
just think, walking around the planet for 50 some years with that actual wording, she said it so many times. It's just like I just exist. Think how sadly disconnected that feeling is.
I would
That
love to,
feeling,
yeah.
that feeling in and of itself was never even honored because it couldn't be. Like
Mm.
how am I just unplugged? I mean, what is that? And so when I told her that she didn't really make that up, that there was a true reason for her not being able to even get it, her face was so relieved. It was just one of relief. It was just like, you mean that's a real thing,
I can't
right?
imagine, like, I was just thinking, standing on the side of the canyon at the Yellowstone Park and how gorgeous, like, I get goosebumps standing there because it's
Yeah,
so beautiful. I can feel it through my whole body, right? But if you're
right.
standing there, it's like, huh, all right,
That's
you're just
pretty.
going like, okay.
Yeah,
You don't
that's
feel
nice.
anything in that. I'm
Yeah,
like, oh my gosh, you're missing out on so much and all the things you do.
right.
Her world is gonna be so different. So I'm really curious. It would be fun to do like a 6 month or a year
Yeah, kind of
follow-up with
follow
her.
up. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. I'll keep an eye on it. And then on the other end of the spectrum, the gentleman that I was working with, how amazing is it that we are trying to hide from it because we're such an empath. We take on everybody's emotions. I don't, and this is an
Ugh.
empath thing also, much less an addiction
Yeah.
thing. I
Mhm.
don't want to feel anything. I don't want to feel anything because it's too much. I had another client just today, huge empath. I don't want to feel anymore. And I said, no, you do want to feel. You just need to learn how to do it in the way that doesn't overbearingly upset your system and overload you. So we really want to get the message out that overloaded empathing is very dangerous, but feeling and not feeling, that's not a choice. We are here
Yeah.
and designed to feel for a reason. And those that are hiding from feeling in addiction really are not only disservicing themselves, but dishonoring the actual incarnation here. This is
Well, the
important,
consciousness of one, if we're not
right?
like, because think about when I just immediately go back to like similar to backdrop people, that
Yeah.
um no feeling, no consciousness, no empathy, for others. And so how that really is detrimental to all of us because you could you just look on the news, like the random violence that happens. It's like, how could somebody actually do that to somebody else,
Mhm.
because you don't want to feel, you're disconnected in a way that you don't care.
It's
It doesn't
crazy.
matter, it doesn't hurt my heart, it doesn't feel
Mhm.
bad to me. And it
Yep.
just is the more people that work on this and feel but can work through it in a way that they protect themselves, the better it is for all of us. The better society will be. The more
And the better it is when they get really skilled. The gal that I was working with today, who was like just learning about my new book, and she's like, wait, so you're telling me even I affect the collective? And I'm like,
Yes.
Yes.
Add
Yeah.
another one to the list.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, oh my God, the light bulb just went on. And it when that goes on, I'm so joyful for not only them, but myself and everything and everyone, because it's like, yes, you
Yes.
finally understand you have a self-responsibility when you added this container to your experience. This is what you are doing. You
Right.
are absolutely in that collective pool every day, all day, every day. And so yeah, I mean, it's fun when the message gets through, but gosh, it's just like pulling one tooth at a time, you know? It's like,
Well, and it's
oh,
hard because,
cool.
like even think about the terminology in our discussions that you have to learn that when you don't
Yeah,
understand it and you don't really, that's why your book is so amazing because you
yeah,
explain it
hard.
in a way that you start to understand that terminology. And, but if you're not aware, you're not, how could
Mhm.
you work on yourself in that way?
Yeah.
Right? It's just so interesting to me, but what an
Yeah,
interesting
it's a
case.
biggie. It was a big
Yeah.
week. And so I told her, and I'll plug the concept of I am teaching the Confident Empath up at the Palmer House on May 3, 4, and 5
Mhm.
of this year. And it is taking registrations right now and starting to fill up. So look on my website if you choose to, because the experience of the class is really, really, I think, takes the information in the book and makes it so hands-on and tangible that you can get the information so much easier that way. And then the book is an add-on or vice versa. So I think it's really important. If this sounds like anything like you or someone you love, give them a holler and tell them to check that out. So
And I can stand up and say I've been through it a couple of times, and the exercises that you do with the group of people and the connection with the group of people
yeah,
is far exceeds reading it from, while the book is great, it
yeah,
just took it to a whole nother level of learning that
yeah.
is invaluable.
And
No.
so does the Palmer House because it's got such cool energies from, everything under the sun. The girl was really cute. She's like, you mean that haunted place? And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah. I said, but we leave the ghosts out of the classroom at this one. And she's like, okay. So anyway, so yeah, it was a very interesting week, a lot going on. People are getting very barraged. Be aware, like Kim said, we've got lunar eclipses, solar eclipses, we've got everything happening under the sun. We're still riding the equinox for the rest of the week, if not more. This is the time when we want to be intentional about what is happening and find that neutral before you go crazy, because I've had my share in the first day of spring already, and it's just been like, oh,
Well, and like it's not that you put your intentions out on Equinix and you don't have any opportunity, put them out there, no matter
yeah,
when it comes out and you hear it, or, three
yeah,
months from now, put it out because
yeah,
all of that makes a difference in
yes.
all of us. So yeah,
Really good point, because it isn't just that day by any means.
no,
It's constant. Okay. So
yeah.
yeah, that was a doozer. Any other questions or pretty clear?
Yeah, I think it's great. And, I think
Pretty,
people can reach out to learn more.
pretty crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy, but an
Yeah.
interesting story, and I'm so excited. I really do think we need to follow up and
Yeah.
see how she's doing with all of it,
I
what the
shall.
differences are.
Okay, cool. All right. On behalf of Kim and I, thanks so much for watching. Hit the like button, share button, and subscribe button if you choose to, which we hope you
Yes.
do. And maybe leave us a comment. So until next time, everybody, Cosmic Hugs.
Bye.